Hello biology students! Today we'll start our first lecture this semester, which is chapter 19. We'll learn about the blood. All materials for this lecture, including lecture PowerPoints in small chunks, the lecture outlines that go with the PowerPoints, the study guide for chapter 19, including the main points we need to remember, you'll find it all on D2L in week 1 under lectures. Just go back to navigate your course video for steps to help you to navigate through D2L. Now let's start our part 1 of this chapter, which is introduction. Cells must be serviced by blood and ISF, or the interstitial fluid, the fluid in between the cells, to get the food they need, the nutrients, and remove waste products. So what's blood? If we go back to AMP1, we learned that blood is a liquid connective tissue. It has a liquid matrix, which is plasma. In addition to some cells, white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. We have a definition here that we need to know, which is hematology. Let's agree whenever you see the word root logy, it means study of blood. Hemato means blood. So this is a branch of science concerned with the study of blood, blood-forming tissues, and the disorders associated with them. That's why if a patient has any disease or disorder related to the blood, he'll go to a hematologist. What are the functions of blood? Blood has many functions, but number 1 is transportation. And under transportation, we have a long list. Transports oxygen from lungs to all body tissues, transport carbon dioxide and waste products opposite way from the body cells to the lungs to get rid of, transports nutrients from the gastrointestinal tract to all body cells, transport hormones from the endocrine cells to the target tissues to do their actions, transport metabolic waste to the kidneys or to the skin for elimination, and transport a variety of cells from bone marrow and other tissues where they lodge and mature. So this is regarding transportation, but this is not the only function of blood. What else? Regulation of pH. It's very important to maintain pH of blood between 7.35 and 7.45, and we'll have a whole chapter later this semester in which we'll learn in details about pH and how we control it. Also, blood serves for regulation of temperature. It will absorb heat in metabolically active areas and distribute it to cooler regions and to the skin. If we look at this picture here, in cold environment, blood vessels in the skin will undergo vasoconstriction, that is narrowing of blood vessels, so heat will be kept in and retained in the body. While in hot weather, in warm environment, there'll be vasodilation and heat will be lost by convection and radiation to the outside. More functions. Protection. White blood cells serves as part of our immune system. It fights cancer cells and it will eat invading bacteria. What about platelets? Platelets also serve for protection, but in a different way than white blood cells. They secrete clotting factors to protect from excessive blood loss. So as we see, blood has a variety of functions, not just transportation. Now let's see the components of blood. To separate blood into its major components, it's placed in a test tube with a substance that prevents coagulation and then spun in a centrifuge. What will we see next? We'll see the plasma which is a medium for transporting materials. This is the liquid matrix for blood, forming around 55% of the whole blood, and it will take the superficial coat. And the formed elements, or the blood cells, including red, white blood cells, and platelets, which form around 45%, will form the deep coat in a centrifuged blood. This is just a hint about the function of each, but we'll learn about them in details later in the chapter. Red blood cells transport oxygen. White blood cells defend the body against disease and cancer. Platelets are actually cell fragments. They are parts of cells. They are not whole cells, and they are essential for blood clotting. It's very important to remember the function of each cell. What about plasma? Plasma is formed mainly of water, around 93%, some plasma proteins, mainly albumins, globulins, and fibrinogen, plus around 1% dissolved substances like ions, dissolved gases, hormones, and waste products. We agree that plasma is the liquid matrix of blood in which cells are suspended. And plasma is important for absorption, transportation, and release of heat. There is another definition here that we need to remember. Serum. What serum? When blood clots and solids are removed, the remaining fluid, which is identical to plasma, is called serum. So serum, in other words, equals plasma minus the clotting protein fibrinogen. Let me enlarge this. Formation of blood cells. This process is called hemopoiesis or hematopoiesis. Highlight the definition. This is the process by which stem cells in the red bone marrow. Stem cells mean the mother cells responsible for production of the blood cells. They will give rise to formed elements of blood or the different type of blood cells. So what's red bone marrow? We learned about this before in skeletal system. It's a highly vascularized connective tissue located in the trabeculae of spongy bone tissue. And this is the primary site for hemopoiesis in the last 3 months before birth and throughout life. So now we need to know about these stem cells. Stem cells are called pluripotent stem cells. Pluri means multiple, potent because they are powerful cells. They can differentiate and divide to form the different types of blood cells. Another name, we call them hemopoietic stem cells. Let's see how the process of hemopoiesis takes place. These stem cells in the bone marrow, in the red bone marrow, will be differentiated to give erythroblast, which will lose its nucleus and then will become more mature to form red blood cells or erythrocytes. Erythro means red and cyte means cells. From the stem cell, we'll also have myeloblast, which will differentiate to form neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. The three of them are called granulocytes, and they are type of white blood cells or leukocytes. Leuko is white and cyte means cells, white cells. Back again to our stem cells. It will divide, become more specialized, and form monoblast, which will become a mature monocyte, another form of white blood cells called a granulocyte. From stem cells, we'll have lymphoblast, which will form lymphocyte. This is a mature form, another type of white blood cell. Lastly, from stem cell, we'll have megakaryoblast. Mega means large cells with a large nucleus, which will become more specialized, forming megakaryocyte. And this megakaryocyte will be broken down into small fragments called platelets. These are the mature platelets, which are parts of cells and not full cells. We all heard about the process of bone marrow transplant. These are performed to replace cancerous red bone marrow with healthy bone marrow stem cells. It's a hard process involving several steps. First, we need to find a matching patient from which we can take the bone marrow. And then, before starting the process, the defective red bone marrow is destroyed by high doses of chemotherapy and whole body radiation prior to the transplant to make the area ready to accept the new healthy bone marrow cells and to suppress the immune system of the recipient so he cannot fight this new red bone marrow. The marrow cells will find their way in the patient's marrow, and the donor stem cells will multiply and populate the recipient's bone marrow. Another way to deal with cancerous bone marrow is to use stem cells collected from the umbilical cord after birth. And scientists found out that this is a much easier and more beneficial way. Why? Because these stem cells are numerous, a lot of them. So we won't have a long waiting time waiting for a matching bone marrow with the patient. Also, it's easy to get just after having the consent of the parents. And it's easy to be kept for a long time. They are frozen for a long time in specific banks and used for transplant of healthy bone marrow of healthy cells instead of the cancerous ones. After blood cells are formed, they will leave the bone via veins, and bone is rich in vasculature. We have epiphyseal veins, we have periosteal veins, metaphyseal veins, nutrient veins, and then they will reach out to the circulation, to the blood itself. And we're done with part 1 of the introduction. We'll catch up in part 2 to learn more about blood cells.